Hi everyone, I am Hollywood Royalty, and today we're going to get into Paparazzi. The Paparazzo. So terrifying as they are, they're not terrifying at all. Not at all. I love these people. As said, when I worked on all these different film sets, I had very purposeful placements. I went from one thing to another life experience to another film set experience. There was very little repetition in many ways until it came to work. But it was just invaluable. And I think a large part of it was because, I apprenticed with a man posing for and appears to be Dodi Fayed. And considering my background, there was a sense that there's a possibility I may have to run into these, similar things that other people in my family have gone through, especially the British royals and even Diana herself. So I would have to have a good relationship or as good an experience with them to make a very positive thing as opposed to negative. And, I hear what Harry's gone through. He's villainized a large group of people who ought not be done to them. But it's somewhat understandable. What Diana went through was surely completely different than what's going on nowadays. But even still, back then, a large part of it was done with love for the lady, and it was giving her leverage that she would not have had otherwise if they weren't defending her, and giving her a certain amount of influence, especially back then when, the internet really wasn't prevalent or the like. So in mass media, for an individual to have it was altered her life in many ways and made things possible for her. And these people were keeping her alive in many ways. And I don't think they're getting the credit for it as they perhaps ought to. But at the same time, we'll get into the different kinds of paparazzi, and there's some that may not be proper or behaving improperly. And Harry has no patience for this, and that I completely comprehend as well. You have to be protective of your family. So, different kinds of expertise and people with telephoto lenses, and what could it possibly be? Oh my gosh. Of course, it could just be the average citizen that has a telephoto lens, just as a hobby. Love to take pictures of birds and different things. And this individual with the telephoto lens, it could just be this. You might not ever see it printed anywhere. It's just something that they're playing with and having fun. They saw you. Then, of course, the FBI, I was told, use telephoto lenses quite a bit for security reasons. They like hard copy imagery and take pictures. And so if you get an unusual one, say when Harry was leaving the unveiling of a statue, then heading back to the United States, they may be facilitating that going back, concerned with his safety, taking some pictures of people in the crowds around him and the like, and of him and of his driver and different things. And he may be mindful that the person he's scowling at may actually be a very concerned FBI agent they've been assigned to do this. And I've encountered these people as well, and some of them were absolutely brilliant. And what they did for a little while is, when I would encounter one, they'd pull out a camera. Sometimes they're just regular looking cameras. And they point it up at something to have me notice what they look at, like what they're seeing, that the things that they take interest in and take pictures of. And I'd just be going up the street, and we'd be on a production, and they'll pull one out and point it at a building, and I'll go, actually, yeah, you're right. This person's brilliant. There is something about, and I would see into the architecture and who built that building and different things, or what the sign was that somebody had put out, and it was a real education. And then that kind of waned for a while. And then they had placed me with some actual paparazzi on one of our productions. And the thing is, you have to keep in mind is my name was Clark on all of these different films. And that's no small feat, being a woman who was the only person in the DGC, Directors Guild, whose name was, I was the only person whose name was Clark back then. Now it's a trend that's kind of followed me. But when I first did it, there was not any person on the planet. It was a woman named Clark except me. You know, the most alpha male anything you could think of was Clark Kent's Superman. And I took it on purpose for several reasons. And we'll get into this another time. But when you're on a film set, these are all the U.S. studio film sets, and you have the walkies, and you have the first AD who's usually talking to me, the third AD, and they can hear it. And when the producers and the directors are sitting there and they're going, when he calls for Clark, a woman keeps answering. Yeah, who is she? What's going on? You know, and it was in part to relay many different things in just one word about myself that are genuine and true. But I'm sure for the few producers who didn't yet know my life story, they definitely, you know, their ears perked up when I was around because it was so unusual what I was doing. It's kind of like Mary Pickford, and we'll get into this another time because it's its own story, the way my name came about and what I did with it and the way it's inspired many people. So, Paparazzi, but Clark, if you think about it, in all these different productions, I was on The 100, what do you call it, the Green Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, Smallville, just many different productions, The Flash, you know, Action Number 1, that was based on the first Superman comic, or several productions with Dean Cain, who played Clark in Lois and Clark, the series. And if you can't think of another role in all of these where you don't have a press reporter who also sometimes takes pictures, who is more of the most iconic representation of this. So they would put me together with these paparazzi, and I would come along and say, hi, I'm Clark, I'm with you for the day. And they go, huh? And I say, yes, I know. Essentially, I am the imaginary line you can't go past. And if you do, you will completely mess up my life for my work and everything. But I'm here with you for the day, and I would get to talk to them personally for the day. And, you know, I really did get a good sense of the paparazzi and different kinds of different paps there are. And, you know, these people here in Vancouver, there are very few places in the world where you have so many celebrities. You can make your living 24/7 just taking pictures. And it's not just a matter of this, you know, like, so here in Vancouver, the ones I was with, many of them had a family, and they were making their living, you know, in studio or doing different kinds of shoots. And once in a while, they would get hired on by a production, and the production would hire them on to get, or publication to go to a production and get a few images that they are able, as somebody comes out of their trailer, headed to set or something like this. And production doesn't mind this, but we have to ask them to please move away, with someone like myself to keep an eye on them, and just be, you know, respectful and mindful while they're working. That's it. They're hired to do this. Everyone expects them to be there. You know, they've let their presence be known, and they want professional images to get what they were there to get, which is the actor being in town, just doing this or doing that. Nothing scandalous. So I said, what kind of money to make off of something like this? Well, well, I'm here for the day. It's not like a photo shoot in a studio for 3 hours. You know, this could be a long day, could be just right off. I don't know. It's not a ton of money. It's not, comparatively to other work that they do. So this is just something they might book and come in and do. And you have to keep this in mind for them. So when you had that one photographer who is on Vancouver Island, that's just a side of where I am, here in BC in Canada, that paparazzi quite possibly was one of the ones that I work with. And you saw the images that they took of Megan with the said baby, or sleeping baby maybe, on her front. They're from a far distance. They're being very respectful and mindful. They're not, I mean, how could you possibly compare that with the swarm of what would go on around Diana? She's trying to get into a vehicle, and you can see within the images of the cameras of all the other photographers they have within that shot, this is just some guy on a trail who kept far away and just got a nice picture of a lady with her baby. I mean, like, what? That's not anything to be concerned with, unless you're doing something unpleasant at the moment, and they're not really interested in getting a picture of you, rubbing your eye or doing something like that. They want a glamour picture. They want something that has a little something to it. They're not there to try to make you look bad. It's quite to the contrary. And I think Harry found that out very quickly, is that his mother used this as leverage for herself. These people kept her alive. They kept his mother alive, and they gave her influence in a time when the internet did not exist. They gave her mass media influence for an individual. That is what her leverage was in life when dealing with the British royals in anything she wanted to do. And that's why sometimes she actually, it sounds like, called them. And he's doing this now, where they're actually setting stuff up, but they're at the same time, they're still villainizing these people. And you ought not be doing this with these professionals who are booked to an event and at an event that everyone expects them to be at if you're going to go to or from. But there are a few paparazzi that are more like, private investigators. And that may be a person who's hired by a group with political interests, or maybe a cult based in Los Angeles, or some other competitor of yours who does want to dig up something on you and would just love to splash it all over the papers. And so he does mention, these reoccurring paparazzi. It's just two of them from what he says. But they keep popping up here and there. Is it them again? Yes, it is. That is troubling, because that's an entirely different sort of person. But he doesn't really have a ton of them doing anything with relation to himself, it sounds like. Obviously, they're probably trying to play it up so they get their IPP status, which that's not really what this is about. But it's, a concern. And goodness knows, it's very understandable that with the life experiences Harry had as a youth, and that, that tragedy that he associates with his mother, that he would have just feelings towards the paparazzi. But unfortunately, that was a narrative that was built up. Probably, it appears to me, to cover up other things that were really going on. So there's this concern as well that, he personally, and I think everyone can kind of understand to a certain extent, has certain feelings about the paparazzi because of this emotional association. But he has to have a certain amount of just logic that he brings to it as an adult, and their conduct now is absolutely not what it was. And at the same time, as said, his mother used to want to create this atmosphere around it because they were keeping her fortified. So here you have the different kinds of paparazzis that were taught to me. Essentially, they had me say to these people, I am Clark. I am the imaginary line you cannot go past. And, it was so funny because I remember this moment when the actor came out and they've been waiting for hours trying to get this one shot. And they pulled up their cameras and going, and they're starting to move in more and more. And I go, guys, you can't. Back up, please. And they go, Clark. And I go, you gotta back up, please. You're gonna get me in trouble. And they go, ugh. And they back up and and they're doing it again. And I was like, they are so sweet. They are actually really sweet people. I wish that Harry had a better life experience with this group. I would think that he would like them. But, you know, in time, at least maybe they won't be trying to get at one another. So there's this. I'll get into death pools. It's a completely separate thing. That really should not be associated with it. But it's something else where they use cameras. It's just something that might be on your mind if you're a public figure and all of a sudden somebody comes out of nowhere with a camera and you're going, why here, why now, what's going on? It's more so what it causes in your mind, what's going on, you know, because it's so out of place for any event that they ought to be turning up at. You're not doing anything particularly of interest, you know. So it's just something that might cause anxiety for someone as Harry. And so it's worth talking about, but in a separate video. And I guess that's everything. And I hope that this goes a small way to at least have a better sense of and respect for people of this work. Because, you know, filmmaking and movies and celebrity and the star system is all under attack right now, and it really is having a hard time surviving, and our paparazzi are a large part of this, and they celebrate these people and the things they do in life, and you have to protect what we built all together, because if this falls off the face of the earth, it's a large part of humanity and one of the more brilliant parts of our existence that it will be really hard to find its equal ever again, especially in these times where everything you say and do is caught and everybody has to start talking, you know, but not really saying what they want to say, and not really being over the top with anything lest you offend, and you know, individuals who have a tremendous amount of influence are, you know, being regarded with disdain, or you know, being dismantled because of other reasons of identity for nations and the like, that are so important that we value, but doesn't mean our enemies value this and they'd love to see it all fall apart. I don't want this small period of time when we had Hollywood and we had our golden age and we had LA film, and it's just something we're suddenly all looking back on and saying, do you recall when? And, you know, a few hundred years later they look us up and they say, wow, they really were able to do something back then that was so different, and we don't have it anymore. And you know, that's a real shame. So let's keep backing and supporting our creatives, and our paparazzi are a part of this process and world.